Well, happy Friday to you. This is the Friday talk on the business of geospatial. It's been an epic week, and that's the title of today's talk. This has been some really fascinating things have happened this week, much of them revolving around GeoIgnite. GeoIgnite's a big conference. It's continuing. It goes into next week, happening in Canada. I've attended 2 or 3 sessions. 2 in particular stood out for me. And on the theme of this, again, since we are talking about the business of geospatial, there were some things that came out that really made me happy. And I thought it was a great conference. And again, the things I attended were super, very well organized and some great speakers. But really, 3 things came out of this for me. First thing was really, there was a business rallying cry, and I'll explain that in a minute. This week as well, not directly related to GeoIgnite, not linked to GeoIgnite, but related to what I'm going to talk about, was some really interesting examples of Geospatial 2.0 in action. And then the last piece is bridge building, and I'll explain that as we go through. So let's move ahead. If I can move my slides forward. So the first talk that I attended at GeoIgnite was the Spatial Finance talk, and a lot of people attended that one. It was a very popular one, and I'm told it was a controversial one as well. But I have obviously been reading some of the things that some of the speakers talk about before, so to me it wasn't that controversial. Will Cadell, Spark Geo, hosted it. Great job, Will. Joe Morrison, who's become very popular, talking about the whole world of Earth observation, particularly satellites, and some other folks, in particular June. I'm going to point at June in a minute, but it was a really interesting and lively conversation. It was really focused around this notion that data is too expensive, and satellite imagery, satellite imagery, and where Joe's now working in the SAR world, which is radar, it remains focused on the military because they have big budgets and they can pay for it. And the controversy was really around the whole pricing model, because it's very opaque. And we see that in the geospatial world generally, actually. I mean, I'm not going to point fingers, but we have some very opaque, complex pricing models in the world of geospatial. It's particularly notable in the world of imagery. And that model's going to change. And I think Joe Morrison talks a lot about that stuff, and I like his writing. And he talks about the fact that it's a barrier to innovation. If you can't afford the time and the money to negotiate on this, on the imagery and the SAR that you need to use to build a solution, you're not going to build a solution. So that was where the controversy lay. Let me be controversial. I don't care. I don't care. I really don't care. I do in the long term, but my interest is in the business of geospatial, which is now. If we start talking about business models that change over 2 or 3 years, and those position themselves now to be in a good place in 2 or 3 years' time, that's 2 or 3 years' time. I worry about today. So let me go to the theme that really is this business rallying cry that I've got there. And you've seen me write this before. We spend too much time talking about data. We spend too much time talking about technology. We spend too much time talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence. We seem to love to talk about all these things that are our own sort of world of the GIS priesthood, as it's been mentioned to me, but the geospatial priesthood. We talk about all this stuff that nobody really understands, and we talk about these long timelines down the road when things are going to change. What about today? I care about today, and I think it's time that we stopped so much emphasis. And again, don't get me wrong, this was a great talk and it's really important. So I'm not trying to talk about its irrelevance. It's highly relevant. But I want to talk about the business of geospatial. And June, in the Spatial Finance talk, multiple times she said, we've got to get down to the nuts and bolts of the business of this stuff. And I did a couple of things on LinkedIn this week to say, this is the elephant in the room. We love to talk about all the other stuff because it's easier to talk about, but the business of geospatial is where the challenge is. Kelsey as well, who works for Esri Canada, he mentioned this in a talk as well that I attended. He sent a comment and a question in, I'm pleased to hear that we're beginning to start talking about the business of geospatial and not about the stuff we always tend to talk about, which is the stuff that nobody understands. So let's put that over to the corner and have us lot that are technical, or those that are technical want to talk about that. But we need to spend a lot more time focused on this, on the business of geospatial. I'm on my soapbox now. But thanks to June and Kelsey, they raised those topics directly in this talk and indirectly in a question, and I applauded them for doing that, because it's about bloody time we spent focused on the business of geospatial, which is a big challenge. How do we get geospatial data and technology into the commercial sector? How do we have insurance companies? How do we have the finance guys? How do we have agriculture? How do we have the tier 2, tier 3 retailers? On and on and on. How do we get those guys to start using this technology? Because we know everything happens somewhere. There's a talk that will be happening on Tuesday. I hope you attend. But we know everything happens somewhere. It's people and places. So, off of my soapbox. The things that I really was happy about this week, and these are notable to me because they're on this theme, is I'm beginning to see folks that I know and have worked with or spoken to, Attentive, or an Indian company. They're using satellite imagery to actually solve problems for people in the landscaping business. The landscaping business. Why is that so important? Because they're looking at low-hanging fruit to use data that is easy to get, easy-ish to get. Let's not overstate that. They can get it. It isn't this long conversation about when are we going to get it. They can get it, and they've targeted an audience who are basically using tape measures to measure areas for landscaping. So whether it's clearing snow or whether it's doing, summer planting and bed preparation, commercial and residential, they're going after those guys. When I first was working with them, I was like, this seems like an odd target, really. I mean, how are they going to get to these small guys, mom and pop shops? They're doing a great job. They have a really simple solution. Guess what? You type in an address, it zooms to that address, you press a button, and it measures everything for you on that property. It's a 2 or 3 click process. Brilliant. Yes, it uses location-based data, satellite imagery. Yes, it uses artificial intelligence. But look at their flyers that they put on LinkedIn. Brilliant. Automated property measurements are here, and a call to action and a picture. Bloody marvelous. Love that. Let's move on. If you haven't seen Planet Watcher's videos, you have to watch them. They are groundbreaking. They are very, very short videos which tell a story. These guys are SAR guys. These are radar guys in space. They've got all the technology sorted out. You're not seeing any technology hang on, I'm putting it the wrong way. Over there, you're talking about outcomes, business outcomes. They are targeting an audience and they're using video very effectively to tell their story. They never talk about SAR. They talk about business outcomes. And their videos, if you haven't seen them, are absolutely fantastic. And you need to take note of them because they're really leading the charge, I think, within this world of simple business-focused messaging, not on the technology, not on the data. Gosh, I'm on one today, aren't I? I wanted to mention this in passing. Liz Durr works for Similarity. Liz is great. They've been at the whole world of artificial intelligence and machine learning for the longest time. They've really got technology down, and they're looking for anomalies. So they're looking at change detection, and they're looking for anomalies. Anomalies being changes which are unusual. Let's put it that way. So it's not like the tide that comes in and out. That's a regular thing. So they'll actually note things that are regularly happening. So I don't want to get into the politics of this because I'm not interested in the politics of it, but there's a dispute between China and the Philippines. And Similarity with their technology found something happening in the disputed territory that the Filipino government didn't know anything about. And it's become a very big thing. And this is actually a picture which was on the news a couple of days ago, ABC, CBS, I think it was, talking about this, and a general in the Filipino army talking about what did we know about this, and Liz was interviewed. The only reason I point this out is because they're getting some traction, these guys. They've built the technology and they're using it in very smart ways. So I was really happy to see that their success in validating their technology. And again, they're not just talking about technology, they're actually producing things which are valuable. Again, I avoid the politics of this. Good stuff. So moving on, I really enjoyed Barbara's talk this morning, her keynote. It was really insightful. Um, Again, as Barbara spoke a lot about data, but her experiences with data, um, and it was an interesting keynote. But she picked up on something in that keynote which I appreciated, because she actually mentioned myself in that. So thanks for the mention, Barb. But I think it's less the mention; it's more the theme of why it was mentioned. I look at and I took this slide from Barbara's talk. This notion of building bridges. We're doing a webinar on Tuesday. Geospatial is everywhere. Now what? And really the theme of that is it's focused really, for me anyway, and there's three other speakers, so I won't speak on their behalf, but we're in this world of change for geospatial. I've spoken about Geospatial 2.0, new data coming in, real-time data from all sorts of sources, IoT, satellites, on and on and on, LiDAR. So we've got this masses of new multidimensional data that we're now processing with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we're in a new place. The old world, which is the 1.0 world, which is sort of the map generation paradigm, if you like. Again, I've heard folks talk about it in those ways, is still highly relevant, but we've got this emerging world. But we have these separate corners, we have these separate places. The existing big players in the geospatial market operate over here. We have the new guys coming into 2.0 world operate over here. We've got the machine learning and data scientists over here. Excuse me, turn my phone off. If I can. Oh, silly phone. Apologies. See, this is kind of doing things live, isn't it? There we go. Got it finally. Where was I? So we've got the public sector, we've got the private sector, we've got NGOs. So we've got all these different groups that are working in different spaces, and I think that there's a building bridges place that we need to arrive at. Everyone's working in their own sort of stovepipes over here. So one of the pieces of work that I'm focused on at the minute is trying to build those bridges, and hyper partnering is where Barbara was talking, and that's where I'm focused as well. So I'm exploring with a group, a global accelerator, and more will come out. I'll share more about this over time, but it's really building those bridges between these different worlds, because I think geospatial is everywhere. How do we actually collectively use geospatial to help build those bridges into those sectors? And there are huge sectors, and I've already mentioned those, particularly in the commercial world, who don't understand geospatial. They don't understand its value to them. And we know as geospatial folks the enormous value that geospatial data and technology can bring to these guys. How do we get them into those places? And it's a partnership, like Barb says, a hyper partnering scenario, which I think is going to build that. So more on this topic to come. But again, I really thought this was an epic week, and thanks to those at GeoIgnite who set that up, and some really great speeches, controversial, insightful, but some really good stuff. More of the same, please. So there's my Friday talk. Thanks very much for watching.